What's going on, everybody? Happy New Year. Back in San Francisco, back at the same old setup. See if I remember how to do this. This feels weird, getting everything set up. So hopefully things are working out all right. Stream health looks good. A lot of people in the chat already. Holy crap. Good to see everybody. I can't go through and say hi to everybody. That would just take, 4 minutes and be a waste of time. But thank you, everybody, for showing up. Good to see you in 2019. How this stream's going to go, if you're new here, we do these once a month, the first Sunday of every month. Basically, I got some stuff to talk about for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we get into a Q&A. So I'll just answer pretty much all your questions. So as I'm going through all my topics that I want to cover, again, about 10 to 15 minutes, start asking your questions. What'll happen is they'll pile up in the chat, and then I'll just kind of go through them one by one. Now, if you do want your question to go up to the top, you do have the option to super chat. Would love it if you did that. No big deal if not. But if not, I'll just get to your question eventually. Or if you just want to support the channel, super chats are welcome. So let me just kind of dive right into kind of give an overview about what I want to talk about. As I kind of alluded to, I just got back from a 6-week, I call it a vacation, but I was supposed to work remotely. We'll get into that more later. But we're going to talk about that. Got some updates to talk about the podcast and some videos and my content, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So like I said, about 10 minutes, and we'll just dive right into it. So let's talk about this vacation I just went on. The reason it was like 6 weeks long back home on the East Coast is because I knew I was going home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I didn't want to fly from California to the East Coast for Thanksgiving, fly back, and then do it all again a couple weeks later, right? So I just talked to my team at work, said, hey, do you mind if I work remotely for those, couple weeks in between? And usually this time of year is pretty dead anyway, so I didn't think it would be that big a deal. And just to back up and give further context, basically my deadline, I have a major build of the app I'm working on due on February 1st. So I had, from December 1st to February 1st to get this build done, and this vacation was in between. What happened was I basically didn't do anything, right? I compare it to like when you were back in school, or if you're still in school, you have this huge long project and then you procrastinate it to like the last week before it's due. So basically the month of January for me is going to be very, very hectic. I'm very, very busy at work as I play catch up. But yeah, so I'm curious to hear if you guys travel a lot or, trying to work on the road or work on vacation, like how do you handle that? Because I didn't handle it very well. Like it was a mistake, flat out, I'll say it. Doing that 6-week trip, I won't do it again. Like I fell so far behind at work. I felt very unproductive, just sitting at my parents' house. The weather in Pennsylvania here is, snowy, gray, and wet. That didn't help. I don't, depression is a very strong word, so I'm not going to say that, but I was definitely like in a funk. Like I was not motivated at all to do anything. So I see Liam Brown shooting super chat. Let me finish this story, Liam, and I'll get to that. Appreciate it. Liam is always insanely generous, so I really appreciate that. We'll get there. But yeah, so I was kind of like in this unmotivated funk while I was traveling at home, and it didn't help that, people were in town for the holidays. Everybody wanted to spend time. So yeah, I would really love to hear how you cope with that while you're traveling or you're on vacation and you're trying to work, your job. So it'd be interesting to hear about that. I didn't fare so well. Like I said, I'm not going to do that again. I'll keep my vacations to just a vacation where I'm not working at all. I'm not going to ever try to work on vacation again, at least anything meaningful anyway. So yeah, would love to hear that. So let me get to Liam's super chat real quick. He says, Happy New Year, bro. Here's a little Kickstarter for the new year. Don't forget me when you make it to the top. Thanks again for the inspiration you give. Practically learned everything from you. Don't know how much 20 is in USD. I think it's close to parity. It's about the same. But thank you very much, Liam. Again, Liam's been around since pretty much the beginning of the channel. So always a great supporter, always very generous. So thank you very much, Liam. I really, really appreciate that. And yeah, as always, man, feel free to reach out if you ever run into any issues. So next topic up I want to talk about is, well, actually building on that, I wanted to talk about, building on working on my laptop that entire time. It's funny how quickly you get used to that small screen. Because like right now, like I said, I'm back home on my iMac and it looks ridiculously huge, like absurdly huge. Like why am I even on this thing? It's funny just how you adjust to like new normals of a small screen versus a big screen. Because it works both ways. When I'm used to my huge screens and then I go to my laptop, I feel like I can't work. I feel so restricted. And so it's kind of funny how I got used to the laptop and now when I go to this, I'm like, I don't even know what to do with all this screen space. So, all right, let's move on. Let's get through this pretty quickly. I do have a couple things I want to talk about, some of the stuff I'm working on, give some updates. We'll kind of breeze through that pretty quick, and then we'll get to the Q&A because I can kind of see the chat starting to pile up here, so I don't want to get too far behind. So let's see here. Look at my notes here. Okay, so I am launching. Let me pull up Safari here. Make sure it's on the right. Well, first of all, last time we did this in early December, my book was available for pre-sale. Now it is available fully. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. If you have read this book, I would love to know what you think of it because as you know, it is my first book ever. So I'm sure mistakes were made and I'm sure I can do better. But yeah, I would love to know, what you thought. Honest feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, because I do plan on making the sequel to that, which is basically the rest of the story about how I interviewed all over Silicon Valley, into my contracting life. I'll talk about how the YouTube channel, what that's done for my career, and then that will end with me hopefully getting a job at a major well-known company here sometime at the end of this year. So, but again, I want to improve on that. So one feedback I got was that it was a little too short. So I will be making the next chapter of the book, or not next chapter, the sequel to the book, a little longer and more, have more meat to it. But yeah, I would love to hear what you thought of the book, again, because it was my first one and I want to improve on it. Second up, back to Safari. Let's go to, sorry, I have so many windows open right now. I have launched seanallen.co/store to, I'll be building on this as we go. But again, you can see the book. I do offer one-on-one consulting. I kind of always talk about that on my live streams. If you are interested in just coaching or consulting, currently I'm not taking any new students because I'm super busy. Again, I told you I'm way behind at work, but keep an eye out on this page. I will be updating that. And then of course the Swift News hoodie you see that I'm wearing now. Here's the books that I recommend, Paul Hudson's Hacking with Swift, Advanced Swift, Cracking the Coding Interview, and then if you want to see my setup. So basically I just launched, seanallen.co/store and, check it out. I will be growing on that. Another thing here I want to point out is I'm going to start building, and I'm sorry if this feels like I'm just selling you on stuff. I'm not selling you. I would love it if you bought it, but that doesn't matter if you do. But anyway, I have some prototypes of some t-shirts that I'm going to start selling. And it's really about building this brand around the concept of build, because I'm obsessed with building things, whether that's building this YouTube channel, building apps, building your body, getting in shape, building relationships. I mean, just the concept of building, I always say like brick by brick by brick, you just slowly but surely build. That concept can apply to like anything in life. And I'm just like obsessed with this concept of like always like building something. Here you got the black on black, if you're interested in that. But these are the prototype shirts. I'll be releasing those soon. But yeah, be on the lookout for that. All right, let me get through this. I know you guys probably don't want to hear all my my promotional stuff here. Another super chat. Let me get to that real quick. Kanduri, thank you very much for the 100. I'm not sure what that is, to be honest with you. But it says, thanks a lot for your videos. In spite of failing to catch up, learning daily, listening to your podcasts and videos keeps me motivated. Well, thanks for that. I'm happy to hear that. I've kind of been quiet on the content over the holidays, but I have a whole slew of new content coming out very, very soon. So let me get caught up on some questions. Let's start scrolling through here. Do some Q&A. All right, sorry, my chat's jumping around here. First question is from Hatim. Says, I hope you answer this question. Storyboard versus code. Is there a performance difference? No, I mean, no. If you're Xcode, it depends on what performance you're talking about. Of the app you built, no. Xcode, depending on if you do your storyboards incorrectly, that can be pretty laggy. But as far as the actual app, no, there's no difference. Say what's up to everybody. Good morning, Glenn. Good to see you. Josh says, I watched an entire ad to earn Sean 0.001 cents. You're the man, Josh. Appreciate that. I'm not sure if Josh, if you started going to those cough ups here in San Francisco, but I'll be there Wednesday. So if you're there, I'll see you then. What's up, Chris Stapps? Just talking to Chris Stapps this morning. He is going to be the next guest on Origin Stories, the podcast show. Good segue to that. Let me talk about the podcast. As you know, I have relaunched the podcast, and I'm going to be doing, first of all, you're going to get your Swift News on there. This live stream will be on there, but I'm doing original shows. And one show is called Origin Stories, where I interview developers from the community to just really find out like how they got their start, like what got them interested in coding, what did they use to learn how to code? Did they go to college for it? Or did they learn on their own? And if they did, what did they use? And then also the story of how they got that very first iOS iOS developer job. So that's the whole flow of origin stories. I'm going to be interviewing a slew of developers from the community, some very well-known ones, as well as some ones that you might not have heard of, so I'm not going to discriminate there because I'm just always fascinated to hear, people's stories, how they got into coding, what got them started, etc. Let me scroll up here. Looks like we got another super chat here. Give me a second. From Christian says, what are the best Swift OCR APIs? Awesome content. Christian, can you say what's OCR? I'm drawing a blank on that. You don't have to super chat that one. Just put it in the chat what OCR is, and I'll give you my opinion on that because I'm not sure. Hi, Sean. Your tutorials are great. Learned so much from it. Thank you so much, Meyer. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Sorry if I'm just skimming over these. I'm trying to get to the meat of the content. Greg says, hey, Sean, how you doing? What's going on, Greg? What is the best resource for Swift coding problems with solutions? I'm assuming you're talking about like some data structures and algorithm type problems. And I always go with Cracking the Coding Interview. That book is in Java, like you kind of are alluding to, but there is a nice GitHub repo out that answers them all in Swift that I would check it out. Also, Ray Wunderlich has a good data structures and algorithms repo that you can look through. So I would check that out. Paul Hudson's in the house, says, you're the real MVP, Josh. I agree. Those 0.0001 cents, man, they certainly add up. What's going on, Caleb? Again, Liam, how's it going? Again, I'm just getting caught up here. Core Data or Realm. So to be honest with you, Sambat, I haven't really dealt with either of these too much in the projects I'm working on. However, from what I hear, Realm is much more popular. Again, that's just anecdotal hearsay, so don't take that too seriously. What do you think about Flutter? You got to get this question in every time, right? I haven't used Flutter, so I can't firsthand speak to it, but I'm happy it exists. I just hope Google sticks with it. It just seems like there's a new cross-platform framework every year. Like there's a new flavor of the year. So I just hope one gets really, really good and sticks, because I think it is good to have options, because basically whether you go cross-platform or native, like that's a business decision based on your app. There's no like one right or wrong answer. It's very situational. So I hope there's a really, really good option for the cross-platform, because as of now, it seems like there's a new toy every year, and that's going to get old. Where are you from on the East Coast? Pennsylvania. Caleb, Swifty Tilting Planet says, love the new podcast content. Thank you. Looking to really, really build that in 2019. Is there a better time to release an app? I don't know. I'm assuming you mean, well, I don't know. Do you mean time of day or seasonality, like time of the year? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but either way, I don't know the answer. Mark Moykin's in the house too. Good morning, Mark. Good to see you. You guys probably know him from the YouTube channel. If you don't, click on his name and check out his channel. Also, I should say Paul Hudson, if you see his name in the chat, I probably haven't scrolled down far enough to see too many of it, but he's doing a live stream here at noon PST where he's going to be doing some live coding. So again, click on his name, subscribe to his channel, and check that out in a couple hours here. Andrea says, you will try to make a tutorial about MVVM, Viper, Coordinator. Not soon, because when I make a tutorial, I want to have experience with that. And I haven't built an app in MVVM. I've played with it and built like sample projects, but I haven't built a production level app in MVVM. So I would want to do that before I really like spoke on it. Shrubham says, do you have any Android experience? Any plans for learning Android? I do not have any Android experience, and as of now, no plans. At least I can only speak for Silicon Valley. So here in Silicon Valley, iOS jobs are plentiful. There is a ton of demand. I will have no problem in my career sticking with Swift and finding work and being fine and loving what I do. I don't think I would enjoy working on Android, just because when I touch an Android phone, my hands melt. It's weird. Like I don't know, I start crying. Weird stuff happens when I do that. So I don't like to do that. Wish you a great New Year, Vladimir. Thank you very much. Happy New Year. I'm planning to move to Western countries, iOS developer job. Can you please provide any tips on how to apply and pass coding challenges? That's a bit too much to get into right now. That's like a whole huge blog post. But tips on how to apply. One real quick thing is I always say don't go through the front door, meaning, use that as a last resort. And by what I mean by front door is, go to lyft.com/careers and hit apply, right? As a last resort, do that, but it's best to try to build a network. I always say network on Twitter, get to know people, and then ask for an interview like that way after you've built a relationship, on Twitter with some developers. It's always best to get referred for a position rather than, again, going through the front door like on the website. So that would be my tip for how to apply. how to pass coding challenges. I mean, that's a 3-hour topic, so I can't get into that right now. What's your hourly rate? It's $100 an hour right now. That's for the consulting and coaching. And then that's also my, like, if I ever did pick up a contracting rate, that was my rate like last year. So I've stopped contracting. I've been working full time for, 7 months now. So I probably should raise that, or I could raise that. But as of, 7 months ago, it was $100 an hour. Sean, do you think someone can become an iOS developer using a Hackintosh? Just curious. I'm not sure. I've never used a Hackintosh, but I'm not sure. I don't even want to speak on that. Chat's jumping around here. Let's go back up to. Yeah, so Liam Brown says he tried to work and travel in Thailand as a 29-year-old single male. It was it was hard. I can imagine. Never been to Thailand, but I've heard plenty of stories. So Liam, I can imagine how tough that was. But I just think traveling and working is just really, really hard. Some people can do it. I tried it, and I don't think I can do it. Anyway. Tigran says, hi, what are the differences between junior, middle, senior developers? What are the topics that is okay a junior doesn't know? So this is a common question, and I think it's almost an impossible question to answer because the lines are so blurred. One thing I will say is that it's not time, just time anyway. It's probably a combination of time and some other things, but just because you've been a developer for 5 years does not mean you're a senior developer, right? Like, you could be horrible. It doesn't mean you're a senior developer. So it's a combination of time, experience, and what you've done. And I don't think there's any everybody's looking for these set lines in the sand of levels. Like, okay, I've done this. Now I'm a middle developer. Now I'm a senior developer. It's more abstract than that. Like I said, those lines are very, very blurred. And depending on who you talk to, you're going to get vastly different answers. So, that's my long way of answering, but not answering. Roberto says, hi, Sean. What is your preferred platform framework to gather user behavior app analytics? I use Flurry all the time, but I don't. I guess when I want to say that with a caveat of I'm not married to it. I'm not promoting it. It's just what I've used in the past and what I know how to use. So that's what I've been using. And to be honest with you, I haven't really put much effort into researching other new ones because I know how to use it. It works. It does what I need it to do. So I just keep using it. But again, don't take that as a glowing endorsement. You have to use this. It's just what I use. Christap says he was 2 months last year in Berlin working from a co-working space. It was quite cool. Also explored local meetups and went to UIConf. Yeah, so that's a good point, Christaps. I think working in another major city, I'm in San Francisco. If I went to New York City to work or Berlin or some other major city where there are meetups and co-working spaces, I think that would be much easier. However, I was in small town, middle America, Pennsylvania. I might have been the only iOS developer in the city, it's that kind of small town. So, you don't have all that stuff. So that's what made it hard. But I do think going to a bigger city, to your point, might be a little easier. What do you think of the future of Apple might be? I don't know. I don't think they're going anywhere for a while. Everybody's panicking over this, stock, stuff going on right now. But I truly believe in 6 months we'll forget this even happened. The stock will recover, barring a overall economic downturn. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Glenn says, what shell and theme do you use? Any particular reason why? I just use the default terminal. I'm not a huge command line person. I do what I need to in there, but I'm not a command line guru flying around in there. And then I use Oh My Zish, ZSH. If you just Google O, OH, my, MY, and then ZSH, that's the one I use. Why? Because that's what they taught us in the bootcamp I went to, and it works. Similar to the Flurry thing. It's what I've been using. It's done what I needed to do, so I've just stuck with it. I'm sure there's better out there. Caleb says, I work remotely, and the best thing for me has been finding a place where I can close the door and focus. Right now, that is a closet. Do what you got to do. Yeah, that was my problem. I did go to a coffee shop, a few times a week, so that helped. But when I was at home, it was sitting at the kitchen table, out in the open with dogs running around everywhere and family, and it was tough. Osman says, keep up the good work, Sean. Thank you very much. Have you got any thoughts on iOS security? A lot of programmers not take it into account. And I want to ask, do you thinking about security when you're making applications? It depends on what kind of security you're talking about. I use Keychain to store, any auth tokens or anything like that. So definitely use Keychain for certain little things, but security isn't crazy top of mind, but I guess it would depend on the app, right? If you're working on a banking app, of course, security's got to be top of mind. The apps I've worked on, haven't really been, need high security, so I haven't really thought about it. Okay, we're getting to the Christoph says that black t-shirt is dope. Want it? Like I said, I'll be launching them fairly soon. The prototypes just came in yesterday, so I was excited to show them off. I'll be putting them on Instagram and Twitter too, so you'll see those later. Could you please teach us what are the best OOP books or course about OOP in iOS dev, and where did you learn it? So like I mentioned earlier, I went to an iOS dev bootcamp, and so that's where I learned kind of the basics of it, and then just, I don't know, over time, various tutorials. I know Paul Hudson, who I might still be in the chat, he's got a ton of books. If you go to hackingwithswift.com, you'll find pretty much any book you need there, so definitely check that out. Yolev says, yep, you got there. I work in a full-time job, and I have so many things I would like to accomplish, so I keep a list that is divided to small chunks of projects bit by bit. Caleb says, I like the black shirt. That is one thing, because I ordered black, red, and white. Those are kind of like the brand colors. So not sure which one I like the best yet. I mean, you got a black on black. Like, that's always pretty good. Rakitha says, how much are the shirts? I have no idea. I haven't priced them out yet. Like I said, I just ordered my prototypes just to see how it looked and how it felt, how they fit and everything. So we're still probably a couple weeks away from actually like launching it. So I haven't put thought into that yet. I will let you know though. Create the Imaginable says, do you see anything new from Apple and SceneKit, ARKit in 2019? Hell yeah. Obviously, I do believe AR is going to be a major part of the future. I don't know if it's going to be the future, but as soon as these glasses come out, or way into the future, maybe even contact lenses get crazy. Long story short, ARKit is in its infancy. Apple's going to be building on that for years to come. So yeah, I'm excited to see. Yol says, when you build storyboard, it takes more time. It's parsing from XML to code. Yeah. Do you tend to be in an app DevCon in Amsterdam? I do not. I am going to, for those that are in the European area that would like to see me, I am going to London March 20th and 21st. I'm going to be there for like a whole week. But I'm speaking at Skills Matter iOS Con 2019. So just Google iOS Con 2019. It'll be the first thing to pop up. And I'll be speaking there in March. So if you're in the area, I don't know exactly what I'll be doing yet. I might be hosting some sort of a meetup. I don't know, like nothing official. Maybe just, hey, I'm going to be at this bar or pub. If I really want to get into character there, I'll be at this pub and, meet me there. That might be the extent of it, I think. I just hope I don't do that and like 100 people show up. That would be weird. So I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do that. Gnat says, I love your content. Thank you very much. Prince Castro, what is the best resource for Swift programming practice problems with solutions? How long does it typically take to build an app? So again, practice problems, I don't know if you mean just like data structures and algorithm problems or actually like practice building an app. But what is the best resource? I mean, I can name 10 resources that I think are great, some of which are in this chat. So like Mark, Paul, myself, Ray Wunderlich. I mean, there's so much out there. They're all great. Mark Morgan says optical character recognition. Okay, so Christian, that's based on the super chat you sent. I apologize. I have never dealt with optical character recognition. I assume that's when you point the camera at like a piece of paper and it recognizes it, or not even a piece of paper, but anything with words, and it recognizes the words. I have not built anything in that, so unfortunately I can't help you there. My apologies. Christoph says, hello, I got my first job as an iOS dev. Can you give me some advice? So my advice when you're just starting your first job, and I don't know you, I don't know your life, so I don't know if you can do this, but my opinion is I would just go hard as hell and bust my ass that first, couple months just to like really learn the code base as fast as possible. You're really letting your team know you're a hard worker. You're just somebody they want to work with. And basically you're building your reputation in those first few months. So you want to build the best reputation possible, in my opinion. Because if you build a best reputation, people love to work with you. Eventually, when you move on, at least here in Silicon Valley, people just bounce around all the time. So if you work at this one area or this one company, you make all kinds of great relationships. Everybody loves working with you. Everybody's going to eventually move on, and then you're going to have people that want to work with you at other companies. So when you're looking for a job, you're like, hey, come work with me, because you have a good relationship with them. So that's a long way of saying that by busting your ass in the beginning and building a good reputation, it's kind of a way of networking. almost, for your future. It's a future investment as well. So anyway, long story short, just bust your ass those first few months and build that good reputation. Do you plan to do a tutorial on core data, or would that be too long of a video? So here's my monthly core data rant that I do every live stream because somebody always asks that. I'm not saying core data is useless. I will say in the 10 apps I've built, none of them have used core data. And amongst all the interviews I went around here in San Francisco, maybe like 2 of like 40 apps asked me about core data and use core data. So I say all that just to reiterate that it's not as common as people think. And again, I don't want to say it's useless and it doesn't get used. It does. But I feel like people learning how to code, like they feel like core data is like one of the top things they should learn. And don't get me wrong, database storage, that is a valuable skill. But core data itself, at least in my experience in the actual real world of, I say real world, this little bubble in Silicon Valley, right? It doesn't get used all that much. Okay, chat skipped around again. Hate when that happens. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Miguel says, what made you start coding? Sorry if you've answered this a dozen times, but I'm wanting to start myself and want to gain as much knowledge as I can. Your content has been extremely useful. Well, Miguel, if you want to check out this pretty sweet book that I've heard of right here on the left here, It's Only Crazy Until You Do It, How I Became an iOS Developer, that'll tell you the full story. It's a great book, so I hear. But anyway, all kidding aside, I'll give the really, really short answer here. Basically, I was at a startup as a sales type person, started learning how to build websites on the side just for my own marketing purposes for that company, and just caught the coding bug and was like, wow, this is all I want to do. Like, it just felt like magic to me. Like, I just push buttons on this keyboard and the vision in my head comes on the screen and other people can see it. Like, I did that and that just totally caught the bug, and I was hooked for since. And then I've been an Apple fanboy forever, not forever, but for a very, very long time. So native iOS development was the only choice. Like, it wasn't like, should I do web development? Should I do Android? It was like, no, I'm doing this. No other option. So that's the brief story. But again, check out the book if you want. I go into crazy detail basically about my story. And for those that don't know my story, like, I wrote my first line of code at like early 30s. So like, I was a very, very late starter, and here I am today doing okay for myself. So basically what I'm trying to say is, you're not too late to start, and you don't necessarily need a CS degree. There's many paths to becoming a developer. Duncan Wallace says, you and Wayne Bishop should do a team podcast. So I bought Wayne's book about algorithms and stuff. I haven't actually really interacted with him. So I don't know if he does a podcast or not. I only know him from the book, so I'll have to look into that. Thanks for answering my question. OCR is extracting characters from images. Yeah, like we said, his goal is to document scanning app for the blind. That's a really good idea. I like that. I hope you build that. Fortunately, like I said, I haven't dealt with OCR. My apologies. But yeah, that sounds like a really, really cool app. Calvino says, thanks for introducing me to iOS development. No problem. Hopefully you enjoy this wonderful world. And if you need help like getting started, getting up and running, feel free to reach out. If you're not following me on Twitter, at @SeanAllen_dev, it's there in the lower right. I'm very, very responsive on Twitter. So if you reach out to me, as long as you don't just copy and paste your code and say, hey, fix this bug, like I'll probably respond. What is your favorite monetization? Not sure what you mean by that. Seth Kurkowski says, I finally made it to a live stream. Hey, finally, Seth. Yes, and congratulations on the new job. We'll just leave it at that. Congrats. I'm seeing a lot of like repeat questions. Tigran says, do you have your personal apps on the App Store? Do you need one to find a job? I do not have any personal apps on the App Store because all my whole career, I did have one, the one that like I started with that I did at the boot camp. Long story short, if you remember Parse, Parse basically shut down their backend, or Facebook shut down Parse's backend. That's what we were using. It would essentially be like if you built your app on Firebase and then Google said, yeah, we're just going to kill Firebase. And then you had to like completely rebuild your backend. That's what happened with Parse and Facebook. So basically, long story short, the app I had on there, the whole backend got taken down, and I just decided, you know what, whatever, and just move on. So as far as personal apps, I don't have them on the App Store because all my, I've been contracting, working for companies. Do you need one to find a job? It certainly helps. I have heard of people getting hired without one, but I think that's the exception, not the rule. So it definitely helps. Abo Falzel, sorry, says your tutorials are great. Cheers from Iran. Thank you. What do you work with now? I work at a company called Aluna. So another pitch to the podcast. I'm doing a show on the podcast called What I'm Working On, where each week I'm going to basically break down what I worked on that week at my job at this startup. I think it's going to be an interesting show, or it's going to be. I've already started it. I'm actually recording this week's episode after this. But it's going to be interesting because for those that don't have a job yet, you'll get to see like what working at a small startup is like what kind of stuff I'm working on. And those that may be working at a big company that haven't worked at a startup can kind of get that insights. Or even if you're working at a different startup, you can kind of see how somebody else does it. So check out the podcast, iOS Dev Discussions. Here, let me pull that up real quick. Just in case people aren't familiar. So that's my podcast, iOS Dev Discussions. Again, you can see episode 2 here, what I'm working on. That was the introduction to Aluna. So if you're curious about the company that I'm working on, listen to that episode. And then each week I will be, releasing basically episodes about what I'm working on that week. So I think that'll be pretty cool. Arsenic Gunner says, hey man, much love for your effort. Let's go devs. Thank you. MGPS says, when did you start programming with Xcode? Like February of 2015. So almost 4 years now. Duncan Wallace says, I have 2 years of experience with enterprise iOS app building. What should I ask as a contractor? Range. I consider myself mid-level iOS dev. Duncan, these questions are always so hard just because, I don't know the market you live in or where you're at. Again, I said $100 an hour, which is probably even, to be honest with you, on the low side for me, but that's also because I'm in San Francisco and you just expect higher prices here because everything's so crazy expensive. If you're in a different area and the company's in a different area, they may not expect that price. So this is always such a hard question to answer, Duncan, I would need a ton of context about your situation, your market, and everything. So if you want to shoot me on a DM on Twitter, kind of give me that context, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I can give a better answer. But it requires a lot of context to give some valuable advice. Neil says, hey Sean, do you have any recommendations on beginner-friendly open source projects in Swift? Do you mean like to contribute to them? I think, so I don't really contribute to open source, so I'm not sure. I know Paul has, he's doing Swift Unwrapped. That's the app he's building, that is also open source. And I know he's very welcoming to new beginners. So just Google Swift Unwrap and don't get the podcast. Make sure you get the app that's from Paul Hudson, and he will help you out there. Josh Adams says Amazon Pinpoint is great for analytics. Cool. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not married to Flurry. I'll definitely check that out. Haven't used that yet. I've heard of it though. Haven't used it. Gilbert Martinez, what's going on, Gilbert? Gilbert and I are doing some coaching soon here. Looking forward to that. I think we start next weekend. But looking forward to seeing your brand grow. I initially read that as beard for some reason, like looking forward to see your beard grow in 2019. Looking forward to seeing your brand grow in 2019. Like the shirts, should do Swift News hoodies as t-shirts as well. Yeah, I'm trying to slowly roll things out. I have so many ideas for pretty cool iOS dev, funny t-shirts and stuff like that. Stuff that this Swift News stuff, you have to be a part of my audience to even know what Swift News is. So that's kind of narrow, but I do have some pretty cool t-shirt ideas that any iOS developer, whether you've even heard of Sean Allen or not, would be pretty cool, pretty funny to wear. So, but I have all these ideas and designs kind of in the works, but I don't want to just dump, 10 t-shirts and 20 different variations. So I'm going to be building out my store slowly over time as well. Jose says, hi Sean, how are you doing? Happy New Year. In your opinion, what's the first step for an iOS developer to become a content creator regarding Swift? Thanks a lot in advance. So I like this question because I think, creating content is super helpful. It's changed my career. I would dare say changed my life, maybe even. But I would start off just documenting kind of what you know. If you're just learning Swift and you're just learning how to build table views, do a blog post about that. Say, don't frame it as I'm an expert, here's how to build a table view. Say, hey, I'm a beginner, here's the resources I used, here's the table view I built, and here's what I did. Because people that are just behind you, in their journey, they will appreciate that because they'll be like, wow, I'm a beginner too, and here's what he used, here's what he did. So I would just kind of, like I said, document what you're working on, what you're doing. If you're just beginning, don't just be sure not to frame yourself as an expert, because people will see right through that, and just tell your truth. Just be honest, tell your truth, and build the content from there. And then over time, as you get more senior, you can start doing more, advanced, tutorials. Gabriel says, I started off with Python and I would like to jump into iOS development, but I am 27 years old and think that I'm kind of old. What advice for me? Gabriel, you're just throwing me a softball here. This is right in my wheelhouse. So like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you were there yet. I didn't even write my first line of code, any code, HTML, CSS, like the basics, until I was 32 or 33 years old. I can't remember exactly. So you're 27 and you've already been writing code. So no, you're definitely not too old. I would certainly say that. And as far as Python to iOS development, I always say with development, because it is a hard job and you're going to run into a lot of roadblocks, but so you have to make sure you love what you're doing. If you're not really loving Python, but you're a huge fan of iOS and iOS apps, then yeah, iOS development is going to be great for you. And then no, you're not old. I know 27 may seem old and feel like you should have everything figured out, but I disagree with that. Like I said, I completely changed careers. I was into like sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff for pretty much my entire adulthood. And then at 32 or 33, I said, nope, I'm going to be a developer, and just completely shifted, and it's worked out amazingly. So nope, not too old. Rakitha says, basketball is life. Yes. Okay, we got another super chat. Let me jump in there here. Conrad says, hey, Sean, looking forward to iOS Con. Always good to have an excuse to fly to London. I just started a code, and your channel is helping a ton. That's awesome, Conrad. Hope to see you. Yeah, if you're going to be there, definitely. Again, I always use the best way to get in touch with me is on Twitter. Like either mention me on Twitter or DM me on Twitter. That's the best way to get in touch with me. So those of you that will be in London during iOS Con, hit me up on Twitter and we'll figure something out, because you're not real, me anyway. I'm not in Europe very often, ever. So I want to take advantage and meet as many people as I possibly can while I'm out there. So yep, if you're going to be there, hit me up. Mikhail says, I know the feeling. Small town, no dev stuff going on. Feels like it's just me. Yeah, and I get this a lot just from other people who aren't necessarily in a big city but still want iOS development or to learn and network. This is where Twitter is amazing. I know Twitter gets a bad rap, but the developer Twitter community is for the most part amazing. So if you feel like you're all by yourself in a small town, make Twitter your hometown. Follow a bunch of people. I always say go through, find me on Twitter, go to look at who I'm following, just as a start, an easy way to start, and then just look for anybody that's an iOS developer and follow that person. And that'll start building your list of iOS developers, and then you can just find more from there. And then that's how you start networking. You can start talking to people. And then also, kind of another good plug here for my Slack community. Let me pull that up. So my Slack community, if you look in the lower right of the screen, you see patreon.com/Sean Allen. That is if you can join my Patreon. That gets you access to the Slack community. And it's a $2 a month thing. And it's behind a paywall for a reason. I found that if you just open it up to everybody and there's 2,000 people in there, the conversations are just so hectic. Like it loses all value, in my opinion, when you get way too many people. So that's why I have this little mini paywall behind for the Slack community. But I want, if you want to network anyway, here's the Slack community. You can see the kind of the stuff we're talking about here. Jowie had his first interview. He thinks he passed. Talking about the interview. Talk about 2019 resolutions. Apple Watch. Basically, we just have all kinds of discussions. So if you're looking, Louise is talking about coordinators and stuff. And then we have, talking about the stock stuff going on with Apple. All kinds of cool stuff. So Jason's getting in there. Slack on YouTube. So let me get back here. But yeah, so if you are looking to network, and I think a lot of people join this Slack sometimes with the wrong idea in mind, is they look at it as like a help desk. Like, oh, I don't participate in the community, but I come in and just copy paste my code and look to get solutions to my problems. That's anytime you're building a relationship, it's a two-way street, right? And when you do that, you're just constantly taking. You're not really providing to it. So if you are going to join the Slack channel, do it in mind with this is how I'm going to network with other developers from around the world. And we've had people that didn't know each other, but found out through my Slack community, they were both in Ireland and they've met up for lunch. I don't know if they've, worked together, done other stuff, but it's just a great way to meet people, other iOS developers, and just network again. So would love it if you joined, but keep that in mind. Don't use it as a help desk. Don't get me wrong. Once you're part of the community, people are more than willing to help you out with your questions. But like I said, don't just constantly just take. Make sure you're contributing to the community as well. But it's a great place to network. So Good segue there. Philip says, Sean, have you run into any problem using protocol-oriented programming? Have you hit the associated type problem yet? So, Philip, I haven't really built an app based on POP, protocol-oriented programming. So, no, I haven't hit that. So, most of the apps I've done have just been tried and true, MVC, object-oriented programming. Haven't really deviated from that yet. I've certainly read a ton about protocol-oriented programming, and it sounds super interesting. I just haven't worked on a project that has that implemented to where, I work on it. And, between my day job, all these tutorials, all the stuff I do, I don't really have too much time to like build my own apps on the side to kind of play with it all that much. But I would like to. It definitely has my interest. Prince Castro says, how long does it take to build an iOS app? How long does it take to build a house? I mean, if you're building 4 walls and a roof, not long. If you're building a mansion, a couple years. I mean, every app is vastly, vastly different. So that's no way to answer that question. And I always use that house analogy just to kind of illustrate that point, Vlastimir says, Gabriel, talking about the age now. I am 35 and started with development 4 years ago and working for about 1.5 as iOS. Please forget about age restrictions and do what you like. Well said. I agree. More people talking about the age here. Says I was 27 in 1994 before iOS and a lot of other language even existed. 27 is not too old. Nope. And I'm sure, Andy here is having a great career. And just think about that. Like, you're starting at 27, 10 years from now, I'm 37. So 10 years from now, you'll be where I'm at right now in age wise. And I still feel young as shit. I feel great in my career. And and I've only doing it for 4 years. So just imagine, you've been doing it for 10 at that point. So not too young at all. Manuel says, question, Alan, if I was ever in your area, would you be able to ever meet up? I know you're really busy, just thought I'd ask. So, Manuel, it depends. I mean, if I have the time, sure. And it's best if you probably meet me near my work so we could just grab lunch real quick while I'm at work. That's probably the easiest to do. But yeah, I'd be down. Let me go here. Okay. Hey, Sean, any plans to do some tutorials with cool animations? Thanks for your hard work, says GG. I've done a couple. I've done probably 3 or 4 animation type tutorials. Trying to decide if I want to go on this rant or not, or save it. I'll save it. So I have plans for my content, and be on the lookout for a video in the next couple days talking about my content in 2019 and kind of the path for it. Because I do have a very long rant. I'll save it for that. So keep an eye out for that. Sam McKenzie says, have you been to London before or to the UK? No, I have not. I've been to Scotland when I was in the Navy. Our submarine went there, but that's it. So this will be the first time for me. And like I said, I'm going there for a whole week. I'll be doing a vlog about it the whole time. I'm hoping to create a bunch of content. I'll be hanging out with Paul Hudson a bit too. So we're talking about doing some stuff here. I've been talking with John Sundell about potentially doing some stuff because he'll be there as well. So I plan on creating a whole bunch of content while I'm over there if I have the time. Like, I know it's going to be crazy busy, but I would love to create some cool content. I'm definitely going to have a London vlog talking about the trip. So Emil says, which do you use for networking, URL Session or Alamo Fire? I've always used Alamo Fire. I'm getting to the point where, because I've been reading a lot of articles on this about how some people have written their own networking framework, because yes, I'm a big fan of Alamo Fire. It's great, but it has I don't want to say everything because I don't know, but it has a lot. Like, there's a lot in there. And oftentimes in my apps, I only might need just the basics of Alamo Fire. So it feels like bloat to bring in all of Alamo Fire if I'm only going to use 15% of it. So I have been using Alamo Fire, but I've been really, really considering just writing my own basic networking framework for the stuff that I use 90% of the time. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that. Gabriel says, thanks so much because I am still struggle, either computer science, bootcamp, or self-taught. Muhammad Ali, I'm sure you get that all the time. Muhammad Ali says, how you get the projects in freelancing? I'm trying so much to make an account for Upwork, Fiverr, but I don't get any iOS projects. How I increase my experience? Every company required experience, any resources. So yeah, I mean, Upwork is I've heard bad things about Upwork as far as like it's like a race to the bottom price wise, and I wouldn't do Upwork, but to get your start and just to get some projects under your belt, it might not be bad. How I got all of my projects and contracting was through my personal and professional network. I've told this story before. I've had a bunch of videos on it. But networking is so huge in contracting. Also, again, just throwing out the ideas, is content creation. I get contract offers, I shouldn't say offers, but contract inquiries all the time just based on this YouTube channel. People will see my videos, they'll reach out to me on email. I have to turn them down, obviously. I don't have the time, but yeah, so if you have an online presence, you're creating content, you're going to get a lot of incoming leads. If not, just try starting with Upwork and then start building your network on Twitter. Let people know you're an iOS developer and this is what you do. Because I know some of mine came from friends that they were like, oh, I didn't know you were an iOS developer. Hey, what about building this? So letting people know is key. Seth said, yep, he's done some Airbnb's Lottie framework. Yep. One Strap Photo says, I know Silicon Valley is full of iOS job, but what are your thoughts on other places like Seattle, Austin, Miami, etc.? Yeah, so I think any big city, you should be fine, especially like Seattle and Austin. Those are major tech hubs. I haven't really heard Miami been a tech hub. I'm sure there are plenty of jobs down there, but Miami usually doesn't come up in that whole, like, what are the tech hubs of the US? But yeah, I think you're more than fine. I do believe, and I'm probably a little biased, that Silicon Valley is kind of like the center of this universe, and you can't walk 2 feet without running into another developer. But yeah, those cities are just fine as well. Sorry, trying to find some more good ones. I'm trying to skim through here because I usually go for about an hour, so I got like 10 minutes left. So I'm trying to, looks like I'm pretty far behind on these. So I'm going to try to pick out some good ones as we wrap up here. So yeah, like I said, I got 10 minutes left. I'm going to yank out some good ones. So if you have any last minute ones you want to throw at me, put them in there now. Or if you super chat, that'll throw it up to the top. So give me a second. Cyril says, what do you think about the Harden game winner? Is he MVP this year? The way he's playing now, yes, he's MVP. That game winner was ridiculous. He's insane. He's unguardable. Within today's NBA, he's unguardable because you can't touch people. Alex Borges says, hey, Sean, Happy New Year, man. Loved your book. Congrats. Thank you. Steppen says, if not core data, what are you using as storage? So all the apps I've worked on have had like a custom backend attached to them. It's been part of like a team where there's a full-time backend web developer who's building the database and the backend all there. And basically, you know, I work with him to build the API or the endpoints and stuff, and I just consume the API accordingly. Robert Ramirez says, what did you learn about getting your first app in the App Store from your guest on Origin Stories? I think only one guest mentioned their first app, and it was simple. Not quite sure the question. What did I learn about getting my first app from the Origin Stories? I didn't learn anything because I already had my first app. I don't know. I'm not, Robert, maybe you want to reframe that question. I'm not sure what you're asking. But I've only done 2 guests, Mark Moykins and Mark Opont. I can't remember which one talked about their first app, but that's a good point. I don't, in my list of questions, I don't have first app on the list of questions. It goes, how did you become interested in coding? What did you do to become a developer? You know, self-taught, bootcamp, college, whatever. And then tell me the story of your first job. Those are like the 3 basic questions because I wanted to keep it pretty straightforward. But I think that's a good idea to ask about, you know, their first app. John Fuller says, do you use Sketch? Any preferred tools? I love Sketch. I'm a Sketch fan. I use it for everything. My YouTube thumbnails, designing these t-shirts that I showed earlier. I did that in Sketch. I love Sketch. If you're not using it, I believe they do a 30-day free trial. You should at least check it out for that 30-day free trial. I love it. I do all my designing in there. Ali Hadra says, I wrote my first line of code when I was 13. That's awesome. Jealous. I can't imagine where I would be right now if I started coding as a teenager. Maybe I'd be burnt out and not even doing this, but because I know like how far I've come in just like 3.5 years and where I plan to go. And I just look back and I'm just like, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with what I got going on, but I'm just like, man, if I was doing this since I was like even 27, like Gabriel said, even if I started this at 27, where I would be ridiculous. So yeah, that's great that you started so early. Keep at it if you love it. That's the thing. Don't just code for code's sake. You got to love it. Sorry, I'm skipping a bunch here. Mark Moykin says, about working remotely, as someone who already works remotely, it's easier transition for me when traveling. That makes sense. My wife is very good about not bothering me, which really helps when concentrating. Yeah, that makes complete sense. If you already work remotely, it's probably not that much of a difference. Yeah, working with 7 other remote workers makes it easier too. You'll be in Brazil for 3 weeks. Nice. Definitely. I know you're not really vlogging, but I would love to see some video put together about that. Working remotely from Brazil for 3 weeks. That'd be really really interesting, Mark. Not telling you how to run your channel, but I would like to see that video. Walter Cole says, "Hey man, you really inspired me to get into iOS development. All Apple now from Windows and Android. Finally having fun and learning to be a developer." That's awesome, Walter. Yeah, I don't want to get into the whole Android Apple wars. It's personal preference. I'm an Apple fan. I love working with this stuff. Sounds like you are enjoying it too. And yeah, if you're just getting into it, feel free to reach out. Like I said, I'm very responsive on Twitter. If you have any questions about getting started, because what I want to help people with just in general is I know so many people try to learn to code, they hit a roadblock and then they stop, they quit. I'm trying to help people, and oftentimes that roadblock is easily solved by somebody more senior, just taking 5 to 10 minutes to explain it. And then you're good to go. So I'm trying to prevent as many people as possible from hitting that roadblock. So if you do find yourself hitting the roadblock, definitely reach out to me. But again, don't reach out with like copy and pasted 100 lines of code and tell me to fix something. That's not going to get an answer. Bhavin says, which language you learned first, Objective-C or Swift? So I actually learned Objective-C first because when I did my boot camp in summer of 2015, Swift had just come out. It was so new. Companies weren't using it. So the boot camp still taught Objective-C. We did like 1 week on Swift, but for the most part, that was Objective-C. But as soon as I graduated that boot camp, I kicked Objective-C to the curb and I can't say I haven't written it since. I had to do one project where I converted Objective-C to Swift. So I have dabbled in it, but for the most part, I just completely punted on Objective-C and said, all in on Swift. Let's go. What do you think about iOS job 5 years from now? I think it'll be fine. The question is, do you see the iPhone going away in 5 years? That's the answer to the question. If you do, okay, then maybe not, but I don't see it going anywhere in 5 years. That being said, it is going to go away eventually. All technology dies eventually. So, it's kind of hard to put a time limit on it, but I wouldn't worry about that because if you learn Swift and iOS, like Swift is a brand new language from Apple. So I always say this, like if you want to invest in Apple's future, or if you're fine with Apple's future, where it's going, whether that's into AR, VR, cars, whatever, if you're fine developing for whatever platform Apple does, it's going to be in Swift. So if you learn Swift and iOS, it's going to be easy to switch to Swift in whatever platform they go from there. One Shot Photo says, thank you for answering my question. Love your channel. Definitely a big help. There's Paul Hudson linking to Swift Unwrap. Check that out. Am I that far behind on the chat? I talked about that so long ago. I didn't think I was that far behind. Very active today. So I've been at like 120 concurrent for a good chunk. I'm at 111 now. At like 102 was like my record. So thanks everybody for showing up. This has been the most watched live stream, I should say. It even breaks the Paul Hudson record. When Paul Hudson and I did the tandem live stream back in WWDC, that was the record. We crushed that, Paul. So get out of here, Paul. Maybe next Dub we'll do another one and beat that record again. Gabriel says, I feel like a lot of people just jump into software engineering and within 10 years, this field is going to be like business. Sure, there is that worry that has become oversaturated because everybody's trying to do it. I do think that it is difficult enough that it's not just like, and I gotta watch my words because I do believe anybody can do it, but I don't believe everybody has the love for it and the willpower to like stick with it through the hard times because it is going to be tough. So I do think it'll be saturated, but at the same time, there's more and more job because software is eating the world. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about that. And also I do believe maybe I'm just arrogant. I don't know. I welcome competition because I believe if somebody's better than me, that's going to make me want to be better. And it's just going to push me to get better because yes, I believe this industry may become saturated, but if you're one of the top people in it, that doesn't matter to you. You're fine. So my goal is to be one of the top people in it. So again, that's just me playing sports all my life and being competitive. All right. I really got to skim through here. Jason says, hey, Sean, just got on to say hi, but wanted to say hi. Thank you very much. Yep, never too old. Sorry, really skipping through here, trying to find some good ones. I'm going to answer like 3 or 4 more here. I got way behind on chat. You guys are awesome. I usually don't get as many messages. That's why my pacing is off. Because I didn't even hit 2 or 3 of the topics I wanted to talk about. Trying to get to all these questions here. Uh, Again, more. I see a lot of comments saying, you're never too old, and I agree. John Fuller here, he's in his 50s and he loves the code. Never a better time. And I think John hits on a really, really good point here. I'm in my 50s and I love to code. It's really just a matter of doing what you love to do. Like I never want to retire. I fully believe I'm never going to retire because I'll be bored out of my mind. Like I mentioned earlier, I love building things. I love doing things. So as long as you're in development and learning to code for the right reasons, that you just love doing this stuff, I think you'll be fine. Fine no matter what age you are. Emmanuel says, congrats on the new podcast content. I really enjoyed the talks. Thank you. Got more on the way. Emmanuel also says, also thanks again for your help in switching my career from embedded development to iOS. I'm starting in 1 week. Congrats, man, on the new job. Philip says, Apple tells you to reach for protocols, but functional approach is much better. I think everyone should learn functional programming. It is the way. So I've heard a lot of buzz around, functional, RX Swift, functional programming, all that stuff. I've dabbled. Again, haven't built a full project on it. But yeah, I don't know if I can't have an opinion because I haven't done it yet. John Fuller says, Navy, thank you for your service. I don't know if you're checking out my book or if you saw my website with my resume. But yeah, I was in the Navy right out of high school. I was on submarines for 4 years. So I guess I did mention my submarine went to Scotland. Yeah. All right, I'm going to answer like 2 or 3 more. Wow, there's so many. Let me just give it a second to find one. Mayak says, I inspired by your content and try to contribute to this iOS community through my YouTube channel. Yep, check out my channel. If you like it, subscribe. If you don't subscribe. But definitely check it out. I welcome all the content creators because, again, it's a marketplace. The good ones will rise, the bad ones won't. But yeah, I don't, like I said earlier, I don't consider my competition. That came out way wrong. I don't consider new entrants into the YouTube thing as competition, right? I think it's there's so much demand for it. Like there's only a few of us doing it. So there's so much demand that new people coming in doesn't bother me. Can someone send me, Hassan says love from Egypt. Thank you. Hi, Sean. How do you find the Apple Book app development with Swift? Also, I don't know if I can ask 2 questions, but I think I can get a little job in secondary 3 as an iOS developer. I don't know what secondary 3 is. The book app development with Swift, I'm assuming I don't know what book that is. That's not the Swift programming language book. So I don't know. Gabriel says, in your opinion, which language do I need to start with if I want to be an iOS developer? Swift. I think if you decided today I want to be an iOS developer, it's 100% Swift in my opinion. Like if you're going to learn Objective-C now, I feel like you're going the wrong way there. Wow, I see a lot of people just begging. By the way, begging to get your question answered and typing it in 7 times is not going to get your question answered. You're making it harder for me to find questions, and that's not what I like here. Gabriel says, please leave the link to your story below because I would like to purchase and read your entire story. Yeah, so Gabriel, it's a $9 ebook. There is a link in the description to the video. I don't know if you're watching on your phone or wherever, but if you go to this video, there's a link. Or if you go to seanallen.co/store, there's a link to the book. It's just a quick little $9 ebook. So, all right, here I'm getting to the end, and let me find one more to answer here. Okay, not a lot of okay, so hey, Alan, what do you plan on talking about at the conference in London? So my talk is going to be about 30 Xcode tips in 45 minutes. So I submitted 2 talks, and secretly I wanted the other talk to get picked. Hopefully I get a chance to give the other talk at some other point later. But the other talk was how iOS content creation can change your life. And it's going to be me telling the story about all the great, this is going to sound braggy, but whatever. All the good opportunities that have come my way strictly because of this YouTube channel and creating content for the iOS community. I've had so many great opportunities. So that talk was going to be all about that. But at iOSCon, the official talk is going to be 30 Xcode tips in 45 minutes. It's going to be live demoed. So I'm going to be doing all kinds of Xcode shortcuts and stuff with a mixture of not straight beginner, but probably from intermediate to pretty advanced stuff. So my hope is that anybody there will at least learn something new from my talk, no matter how experienced you are in Xcode. So that's the plan. All right, I want to say what's up to Alfonso. He's been a long time supporter here, so meant to join earlier. Any ideas to make content about what to focus on once you get your first iOS job? Ways to make an impact with your team. Alfonso, I know you just joined. I answered a very similar question earlier. I'll give you the really short and sweet version. If you watch the replay, it's one of the very, very first questions I answered. But basically, the answer was bust your ass for the first 5 to 6 months. Go way above and beyond. I know everybody preaches work-life balance, but my opinion is if you're trying to establish your reputation at this company very early, I would skew that work-life balance more towards work, again, just while you're establishing yourself. Once you've established yourself, you can skew it back. Your reputation is such a powerful thing in this community. So I believe building a good one is super important. So all right, thanks everybody for showing up. Gonna wrap this up now. Appreciate it. Be on the lookout for Swift news tomorrow, and I got a bunch of videos coming out this week. So again, we do this the first Sunday of every month. So the first Sunday in February will be the next one. Thank you everybody for showing up, and see you later.